Hi everyone, it's Nadia from YARNutopia. Today we're making this beautiful patchwork medley baby blanket. This is an interesting blanket because I'm using different stitches and different pieces and kind of sewing them all together and making a patchwork kind of quilt style blanket today. So I'll get into the supplies we need, I'll talk about this piece and frequently asked questions that I get, and then we'll get into making this beautiful piece. So the supplies, I'm using two types of yarn today. They're both red heart yarns, and I don't have any more stripes left. I used all of my, this is how much stripes I have left. It's called Soft Essentials Stripes. And this other one is just Soft Essentials, just a solid color. So these are the two yarns we're going to be using in this project today. For the stripes color, it's this beautiful design. It gives a nice striped look to it naturally. And this one is called Purple Rain Stripe. Okay, so it gives a nice stripe look to it. This yarn is a bulky yarn, size 5, but it's on the thinner side of a bulky yarn. So it's between a size 4 and a size 5 yarn, which is between a worsted weight and a bulky yarn. You could use an Aran yarn and that would be perfect for this project, but it is it's a little heavier than a worsted weight, but not super bulky, as you can see here. So this is the thickness of yarn we're going to use. So if you can't get, you know, Soft Essentials stripes or Soft Essentials regular yarn, get something comparable to that. And then this other color, the solid color, gives a nice, just a nice solid tone to it. And this one is called Sugar Plum. And this one is also same size, bulky, size 5 yarn. So you can see there, Sugar Plum, bulky size. And there is our label, Red Heart Soft Essentials. Now for the yardage, this solid color comes in 131 yards and the stripes comes in 110 yards. So I used, for this plain Sugar Plum color, I used 3.5 skeins total, which came to about 460 yards of yarn. Now I bought 4 skeins total, so that is 524 yards, and this is how much I had left over from this project, just this little bit, okay? So it's about a half a skein. And then for the stripes, since that only comes in 110 yards, I bought 4 skeins of this as well, and that came out to be 440 yards, and this is all I had left of that. Okay, so you're going to need to get 8 skeins total, but 4 skeins of the regular and 4 skeins of the stripes. Okay, those are the 2 yarns we're using today, and that's how many yards we're going to be using. So if you can't get this yarn, again, you can get something comparable in that amount. And I'll have all that in the notes in the materials section on the blog, where you'll get the written pattern for this on YARNutopia.com. So that is the yarn. Now, as for the hook size, we are using a J hook, which is 6 millimeters. This fancy hook I'm going to be using today in my demonstration. I love this hook so much. It has a wooden handle. It is ergonomic, so it fits around the curve of my hand, and this hook is fixed in there. So it's a really nice hook. I got this at the Etsy shop Would Be Fancy, so I'll put the link to the shop on Etsy where you can get hooks like this, and you can get your own online at Etsy. At the shop Would Be Fancy. This hook is fabulous, and I've been using all these hooks with the wooden handle. It's just really easy to use with the shape of the hook, and if you have arthritis and anything, it's just really nice to use. So this is a J hook, which is 6 millimeters, which is what we're going to use throughout this whole pattern. And then you're going to need a scissors and a yarn needle to cut your yarn, sew your pieces all together, and cut any loose ends. So those tools will come in handy in this project. So then you're also going to need, I would recommend a little lamb, a little measure tape, so you can measure your pieces out when you are making this, because your tension may be different than mine, and I'm measuring my pieces out so that this big piece measures with this big piece, and so on and so forth. So these little pieces you can measure as well, just so that you can get all your pieces the right size to be able to sew them together and you won't have any bunching up or any weird stitches. anywhere. So those are all the supplies we need. Now, as for frequently asked questions, I do get a frequently asked question about how much yarn we're going to need, and I already covered that, so if you need to, rewind this video to get that information. But for sizing, this whole blanket, let me measure this out here. All the way across is 36 inches, which is approximately 92 centimeters across. Okay, and then the length of this is about 29, oh, almost 30 inches, which is about 76, almost 76 centimeters. Okay, so that is how big this blanket is. Now you can make your border wider or longer, or however many rows you want to do on your border to make this bigger if you want to, but this will be perfect for a newborn up to a toddler blanket. So that is the size of the blanket. Normally baby blankets run 36 to 40 inches, so you could be a 36 by 36, even a 30 by 40 would be good. Or a 36 by 40. Between 36 and 40 inches on a baby blanket is typical sizing. Okay, and I'll have all that information in my blog. So now, as for each piece, I do measure this as we go, but this corner piece is 40 centimeters, which is about 16 inches, and the one beneath it is almost the same. Okay, 16 inches. And then this one would be 16 inches, and then these three pieces would be 16 inches, okay? And I measure all of these as we go. Now this is about 4 inches in between here, okay? 4 inches on this piece, so then each of these little squares should be about 2 inches. Yep, 2 inches, okay, on each of those little squares. And then that's 4 inches as well. And then this piece and this piece are also 4 inches across. Okay, so it's a lot of different, using both of the yarns. We're using solid here and stripes here. Solid on this one, stripes on this one, and using both solid and stripes. These little squares in the middle here use solid and then stripes. So it's a really interesting design. It's just really eclectic, and I'm really a big fan of eclectic designs and different textures, different you know, stitching. We're using cluster stitches, single crochets, half double crochets, slip stitches, just a great amount. And we're working in the back loops, so making a ribbing design. So if you are a beginner crocheter, this would be a great project to learn new stitches, different stitches, and I try not to make it too intimidating where you're sewing these pieces together later on in the tutorial. So try to you know, make this. You can make this with whatever yarn you have, and yeah, have fun with it. So before we begin making this beautiful blanket, I do have to mention there are links in the description of this video. There's a link to my Facebook and Instagram. Please, please, please join me on there. Show me your crochet projects. What are you making? And if you're making this, please share your photos. Also, share a photo on Instagram and hashtag YARNutopia so that I can see your crochet creations. And also, you can follow my blog, YARNutopia.com. We'll have the written pattern for this whole project, and the video tutorial will be on there, and you'll be able to see all the frequently asked questions in the notes section and the materials section of that pattern. Also, there's my Snapchat. Follow me on Snapchat. I'm YARNutopia on there, and I have to say a huge thank you to my dad, Fuad, Azmat, for taking the time to make this video with us. He's right there behind me, and he is our videographer, editor, and photographer for all of our videos. So make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube so you can get that update on when he posts our next video. Alright, now let's just get started and make this beautiful Patchwork Medley baby blanket. Let's start out with the stripes yarn, the purple rain stripes of this Red Heart Soft Essentials yarn. And let's start with a slip knot. So put your short end over that long end, then fold this down over the long end, and then pull that through. Okay, and pull it tight. And then you can insert your hook in there, and we can begin. So let's start out by chaining 48. So yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, 3, 4, 5. I won't make you watch me do all 48 chains, so just chain 48 just like this, and then I'll meet you up for row 1. Alright, so there's my chain. This is what it should look like for you, just a big long chain. So now what we're going to do is go on to row 1. In the second chain from the hook, we are going to half double crochet. So the loop on the hook doesn't count as a chain, so count 1 and 2. This second chain from the hook right here is where we're going to half double crochet. And what I like to do is, if you're looking at your chain like this, I personally like to turn it toward me like that, and you can see these back ridges here. I like to work in those back ridges. So I am going to go in this 1, 2, second chain here. I'm going to turn that toward me. We're going to yarn over our hook, go into that second chain, okay, in that back ridge, then yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 of the loops on your hook. Okay, that's a half double crochet. Now in the very next chain right here, we're actually just going to slip stitch. So go into, just no yarning over, just going into the chain, then yarn over and pull that through and pull through the loop on your hook. That's a slip stitch. And we're going to alternate these 2 stitches now across this chain. So yarn over, make a half double crochet in the next chain. So go in, then yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And then slip stitch into the next chain. Now with our slip stitches, we're only going to go in and then yarn over, pull through and through, but do not pull that so tight because you want to work in these slip stitches in the next row. So now we're going to make a half double crochet in the next chain, and then we're going to make a loose slip stitch in the next chain. Just like that. So you want to make sure you'll be able to work in the slip stitches in the next row. So then half double crochet in the next, and then slip stitch in the next. Okay? At the end of this row, we will have 47 stitches in total. So just alternate these 2 stitches across here, and then I'll meet you up for row 2. Alright, when you're finishing row 1 here, we're going to end with a half double crochet in the last stitch. Okay, so alternating those 2 stitches, you're ending with a half double crochet in the last stitch. Now for rows that are repeats, if you start with a half double crochet, you're going to end with a half double crochet. Now row 2 is a little different. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work around. So now we're looking at it like this. It's a pretty design already. And in the very first stitch, since looking at it like this, it is a half double crochet right here, we are going to actually slip stitch into there. So we're not actually going to half double crochet in the half double crochets. We're going to slip stitch in the half double crochets. So only go into that stitch, then yarn over, pull through and through. Now the very next stitch is one of the slip stitches from the previous row, so we're going to half double crochet in there. So yarn over, go into that slip stitch, that's why I said to make them looser from the previous row, so we can get in there, yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So now we're alternating these stitches then across. So you can see here this is a half double crochet stitch, and to see the half double crochet stitches, it's easier to know if you can see this pronounced line right here, okay? So you can see across here, these pronounced lines, those are our half double crochet stitches. So if you're unsure of if it's a slip stitch or a half double crochet, just look for that pronounced line that's kind of poking out, and you'll see that those are the half double crochets. So this next stitch right here is a half double crochet, so we're going to put a slip stitch into it. And then the next stitch is a slip stitch, so we're going to put a half double crochet into that one. And we're just going to alternate these now across. So then at the end of row 2, we are going to have ending a slip stitch at the very last stitch. And I'll meet you up at the end of row 2, and then we'll go on to row 3 together. Alright, just finishing row 2 here. I have to slip stitch in this very last stitch, so make sure you don't miss that. And then we can go on to row 3. So now chain 1, turn your work around, and like I said on earlier, we are going to half double crochet in the slip stitches and slip stitch in the half double crochets. So since this row has a slip stitch first, we are going to half double crochet in there. So yarn over first, make a half double crochet in this first stitch. Okay, we're on row 3 now. And you can see this pronounced line here, so there is our half double crochet, so we need to put a slip stitch in there. And we're just going to do that, alternating those 2 stitches across then for row 3. So then rows 4 through 44, we are going to just repeat rows 2 and 3, just alternating these 2 stitches. You know, a repeat of row 2 would be starting with a slip stitch, and a repeat of row 3 would be starting with a half double crochet. And like I said earlier, if you start with a slip stitch, you're going to end with a slip stitch. If you start with a half double crochet, you're going to end that row with a half double crochet. And you can follow along with the written pattern that's linked in the description of this video to see the alternating stitches and which rows are which, but it is a repeat pattern. At the end of this row, you'll just need to chain 1, turn your work, and go on to the next row. So I'm just going to do this then, this repeat for till I finish row 44. And once I'm finished with row 44, I will meet you up, and then we'll fasten this part off, and we'll go on to the next step together. Alright, I'm just finishing up here. I actually had a bigger piece already done. So row 44 is a repeat of row 2, so we are going to end with a slip stitch right there, and we're going to fasten this part off. So chain 1, cut your yarn. Okay, I'm just going to cut it short, and then we're going to pull that through and pull it tight. So this is what your piece should look like. Okay, I really love the design. How cool is that? And the striping effect looks fabulous. So now you're just going to have to measure this piece out. Now, if your piece was not measuring about 12.5 inches or 12 inches or so upward, which is about 31 centimeters. If yours is not measuring 31 centimeters right now, then you would have to go on to making more rows. But if you want to, you can I mean, this is quite stretchy. You can stretch this out, make sure that it is the 31 centimeters, which is 12 inches, okay? And it can even stretch up to 12.5 inches very easily. So you can, you know, play around with it, make sure that it is the measurements, and obviously the lengthwise is 15 inches, okay, across, which is 38, almost 39 centimeters, okay? So that is the width of this piece, and that's how big yours should be. So if you're if you're a tighter crocheter or a looser crocheter, just make sure you make a piece that is this big. And then just rewind this if you need to, and make another one. But now what I'm going to do, I have this one too, so we need to make 2 of these in total. Okay, so I have 2 of these done already. And once you have both of these done, just repeat the same pattern that we just made that one, make it with this one. Okay, same pattern, same everything. Just make 2 of them. Once you have these 2 made, we can set these aside, and then we'll make the other 2 pieces next. Alright, now I have just the plain light purple color. This is called Sugar Plum in the Soft Essentials Red Heart yarns, and I am going to start off with a slip knot. So put your short end over that long end, fold this down, and then pull that through and pull it tight. Okay, there's your slip knot. You can insert your hook, same size hook for the whole pattern, just like that. So now what we're going to do is chain 43. So yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, I showed you how to chain in the beginning of this tutorial, so if you want to, just chain 43, and then I will meet you up when I have my 43 chains. Alright, I have my 43 chains, so this is what your piece should look like so far, just a long chain. So now what we're going to do is cluster stitch in the 4th chain from the hook. So remember, the loop on the hook doesn't count as one, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right in that chain here, we are going to, again, turn the chain toward us, and then we're going to cluster stitch in there. So a cluster stitch is yarn over, go into that chain, okay, then yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, but hold these 2 loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over again, go into that same chain, yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops, but again, hold those 3 loops on your hook, yarn over again, go into that same chain, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So now we have 4 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. And that's a cluster stitch. Now in the very next stitch, or the very next chain here, we are going to double crochet. So yarn over, go right into that next chain, then yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Okay, and you can see that this, if you poke this kind of forward there, it'll pop up in the back there, kind of making more of a bobble style stitch, which is what we want because it will have that texture to it with that cluster. Okay, so now we're going to alternate these 2 stitches across this chain. So in the very next chain right here, we are going to cluster stitch. So yarn over, go into the very next chain, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, again yarn over, go into that same chain, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and again yarn over, go into that same chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and now we have 4 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops, and now we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. So yarn over, I keep saying stitch, the next chain here, go in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. That's a double crochet. Okay, and you can see again on the opposite side, these little stitches are poking out more like a 3D design. Really pop in there. Looks cool. So now just alternate these 2 stitches all the way across this chain, and once I am finished here, let's see here, we'll have 41 stitches in total. And I do want to mention, let me finish this repeat here, it will kind of curl on you, so kind of just bear with it. It will straighten out once you have more rows. Row 1 is always the most difficult, but if you see here at the beginning of our row, it looks like there's a chain up 3 right here. 1, 2, 3. That is actually going to count as a stitch. So in the next row, when we come to the very end of the next row, we will be working a stitch in here. Okay, this is 1, 2, and 3, and then you can see our cluster stitches right here. Okay, so just keep in mind that this chain 3 at the beginning of this row is a stitch. It does count. So when you are counting your 41 stitches when you finish this row, that is counted as one of the stitches. So I'll meet you up, just alternate these 2 stitches across here, and then I'll meet you up for row 2. Alright, finishing row 1, we want to end with a double crochet in the very last stitch. Okay, so the very last chain there. Okay, and then we can go on to row number 2. So this is what your piece should look like. But when you turn it around, you'll see that the cluster stitches are more popping on this side. And this is going to be the right side. This is going to be more of the outside, okay, the right side of the blanket, and then this will be the back of the blanket. Okay, so this is the front. So now going on to the next row, we are going to chain 1. And we're going to single crochet in each stitch across, okay, for a total of 41 stitches. So just single crochet in that first stitch, single crochet in the cluster stitch, single crochet is going in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, go in, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, so we're just single crocheting in each stitch across. Okay, that's all we're doing, no alternating anything. And when I finish this row, I'll show you where exactly your very last stitch should go, because I was trying to explain that chain up 3 in the beginning of row 1. So I'll just meet you up when I'm finishing this row, and then we'll go on to row 3. Alright, I'm finishing row 2 here. You can see my cluster stitch is right here. I'm going to single crochet into there, and then our very last single crochet needs to go into, you can see this chain up 3 right here, 1, 2, 3, right at the top there, under this loop here. Okay, I'm going to go underneath that loop and that next loop right next to it, right there. Okay, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So if you need to, count back 41. You should have 41 stitches on row 2, so this is what it should look like, okay? And now we are going to go on to the next row, row 3. So chain up 3, 1, 2, and 3, and from here on out this is going to count as our first double crochet of the next row. So turn your work around, okay, and now we are going to skip working in this stitch right here, because this chain up 3, like I said, counts as a stitch, and that's basically like it's worked in that stitch there. So in this very next stitch here is where we're going to work our next stitch, which is a cluster stitch. So yarn over, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, go back into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and again, yarn over, go into the same stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through all 4 of your loops on your hook, and then double crochet into the next stitch, and then cluster in the next stitch, and then double crochet in the next stitch, and then cluster in the next. So we're just alternating these 2 stitches now for this row. So then that's the repeat, that we're just repeating then rows 2 and 3 for, let's see here, till I finish row 25. Okay, I'm going to do 25 rows in total. We are ending on a repeat of this row 3. Okay, so we're ending on a row that has cluster stitches and double crochets. Okay, we're not ending on a single crochet row, because this this pattern started with a cluster stitch and double crochet row. So we're going to end this little block of this little piece that we're making. We're going to end it with the same type of stitch, the cluster and the double crochet. So then the next row, row 4, is going to be a repeat of row 2, and then row 5 is going to be a repeat of row 3, and we're just going to alternate these 2 rows until we finish row 25. Okay, so I'm just going to do that. Then make sure to, if you need to, rewind this to see what I did at the beginning and end of each row. Otherwise, you can follow along with the written pattern. At the end of this row, make sure you end with a double crochet, because in the beginning of this row, that chain up 3 counted as a double crochet. So if you start with a double crochet, you're going to end with a double crochet. So just make sure you do that. And then when you finish a repeat of the row 2, just make sure at the end just to chain 3 to start your next row of the cluster and double crochet stitch repeat. And that all information will all be in the written pattern, so you can follow along, or just rewind this to see what I'm doing for rows 2 and 3. And then once I finish row 25, I'll meet you up and we'll go on to the next step together. Alright, I'm just finishing row 25 now. Okay, so once you finish, remember I said it was going to be a repeat of row 3 for the clusters and double crochets row here. So now we're going to chain 1. We're going to cut the yarn, and then we're going to pull that all the way through and pull tight. Okay, we're going to flip this around to this side where the bumpy stitches are more pronounced, and I'm going to turn this upside down here. So row 1 is facing me here, okay, or closest to me. And this is what your work should look like. Now we're going to measure this piece out, because this is how big your piece should be. Okay, again, just like those other, the stripes pieces, this is 12 inches. It can stretch to 12.5, which is about 31 centimeters. Okay, that's as long as it's going to be. And the width is actually bigger, wider, but with this being so puffy and everything, mine stretched out to be 16 inches, and that's about 40 centimeters. Okay, so you can grab your stripes pieces that you have done and lay them over the top, and you can see that they are very, very close in size. Okay, it's going to stretch nicely, and that's going to look great. Okay, so you want them to be about the same size. Okay, so you want the stripes piece and this piece to be the same size, and if you need to, if you're a looser crocheter or a tighter crocheter, you'll just have to, you know, change out the sizing and you know, make more or less rows if you need to, but those are the pieces. So I need you to make another one of these pieces here. So another one of these, I have one already done for you to see. Okay, they are exactly the same. Okay, just like that. And so we have two pieces of this, and then 2 pieces of the stripes done on here already. Okay, so now we are going to, if you want to, line these up like you would your blanket. So we're going to have this piece looking this way. Okay, this piece looking this way, and my background here is a little bit different, or a little bit small here, but I'm going to try to show you the best I can. Okay, and then this piece this way. And you can see, actually it's not going to look like that, but you can see here, row 1 on this piece right here is on this outer edge. Okay, you want row 1 on that piece to be on the outer edge as well. And then this piece here, you want the row 1 to be on this outer edge, and on this piece here, you want row 1 to be on that outer edge. Okay, so that they are all kind of just facing each other. Okay, now what we're going to do is actually I'm going to separate these in like this, because we're going to make a piece for here, a piece for here. Actually, these are going to be exactly the same. And then, so I'm just going to show you one. And then a piece for here and a piece for here, which this one and this piece are going to be exactly the same, just like little strips, okay? So I'll just show you one of these and one of these, and then we just have to make this center square, and then we'll be done. So I know it sounds like a lot, but we'll get through it. We're just going to go next into making the shorter rows of this strip here. So I'm going to make one real quick, and then I'll show you how to make the other one. Alright, so I have my stripes yarn. What I'm going to do is make the short strip that goes between these 2 pieces here. So let me show you. I have these 2 pieces that are going to be lined up next to each other like this. Okay, we have 4 pieces in total, but we have these 2 that are going to be next to each other, but we want to make a strip that goes down between them, okay? And then there's our long strip that is going to go here. So we're going to make the short strip first. Okay, so I'm going to make that right now, and then the other one is essentially the same, but I'll give you some information about that before you make that one. So start out with your Purple Rain stripe yarn, and let's start out with a long tail for sewing. Okay, so I'm going to, I guess, just guesstimate about 36 or 40 inches, okay? And then we're going to take that 36 or 40 inch long strand you have and put it over the other strand, okay, that's attached to the ball of yarn. And then we're going to fold that down and pull the yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn, we're going to pull that through. Okay, so we've made a slip knot, but we have a very long strand, okay, on this end here, okay, because we're going to be using that for sewing. So we can insert our hook into that loop, and now I'm going to work with this yarn, which is attached to my ball of yarn. Okay, so now we are going to make the short strip, and that we have to chain 39. So yarn over and pull through 1, 2, 3. Again, I won't make you watch me chain all 39. So just chain 39, and then I'll meet you up for row 1. Alright, now I've chained 39. Now if your chain, if you want to just lay out your chain just like this, okay, and then grab your piece, one piece, and turn it to the side, just make sure that the beginning and end of your chain match up and line up with the width, or I guess the length, of this piece here on the side, okay? Because these are your short strips, so it would be on the short side of your big block, okay? So you want to make sure, if you need to, you can chain more or take off a few chains if yours is big, but enough. But don't stretch it out or anything, just lay it next to it and you'll see that it does line up perfectly from the beginning to the end, okay? So now we can go on to row number 1. We are going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook and across this chain. Again, the loop on the hook doesn't count, so count 1 and 2. I like to turn the chain toward me, going into that back ridge of the second chain. We're going to go in, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Okay, that's our single crochet. So again, go into the next chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And we're just single crocheting across this chain. So at the end of this row, row 1, we'll have 38 single crochets in total, because we chained 39, but we worked in the second chain from the hook, so that first chain from the hook doesn't count as anything. Okay, so I'm going to have 38 single crochets by the end of this row, and I'll meet you up for row 2. Alright, just single crocheting in my last chain here. Now we can go on to row 2. We're going to chain up 1 and turn our work around. And row 2 is just a repeat now. We're just going to single crochet. Oh, actually not a repeat. We're actually going to work in the back loops only. Let me look for my other, here's my needle. So what we're going to do is make this ribbed effect, okay? So instead of working through both loops, okay, both loops, both loops, both loops like this, we're going to work in the loop that's furthest away from us. So this one is closest to us right here, okay, it's closest to us, and this one right here is our back loop, okay, so this one would be right there. Back loop, back loop, back loop is the one that's furthest away from us. That way this will have a ridge and it'll give a ribbing effect. Okay, so we're going to single crochet across, work in this first stitch here, so our chain up 1 doesn't count as anything. So go into the back loop of this first stitch right here, then yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Okay, just like that. Then go into the next back loop of the next stitch right there, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, and we're just doing this all the way across here, and this is our repeat until we finish row 8. Okay, I'm going to change color after row 8, so I'll show you how to do that, but we're just going to single crochet in each stitch across, working in the back loops only. Then at the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and work a single crochet in the back loop of each stitch across. And you can see here that makes that ribbing, nice ribbing line there. Okay, if you don't want a ribbing effect, you can work through both loops, and that's totally fine, but then your work will be completely flat in these strips, which is totally creator's choice. So that's up to you. So get creative with it, and I am going to work this then for 8 rows total. I'm on row 2 now, so rows, the rest of row 2, row 3 through row 8. Once I'm finishing row 8, I'm going to meet you up because I'm actually going to change color to the solid sugar plum color, and then I'll show you how to change color, and then we'll go on to the next step from there. Alright, I'm just finishing row 8 here. When you have 1 stitch left, we are going to change color. So go into that back loop of that last stitch, and then yarn over with the same color. But now we're going to drop this color and pick up our new yarn of our other color, the sugar plum. plain design, plain solid color here, and we're going to pull that through both of those loops to finish off that stitch. Okay, it's going to be kind of loose here, so pull all your strings, all your strands here tight. Okay, and then we're going to drop our stragglers and start working with the purple yarn now. So chain up 1, turn your work around, and work the same single crochet stitches across here. For this is row 9 now, so going into that back loop of that first stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, but now we're working with our new color. Okay, and we're just single crocheting across here. Okay, just like we were doing for rows 9 through 16. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a sec though. I'm going to cut this old color where we changed color here. I'm going to find my scissors. Oh, there they are, way over there. Okay, so then cut this old color. And then we're going to tie this in a knot. Okay. Just like that. And then we're going to sew that in later. Okay, so then we're just going to, now we can get rid of all of the yarn there, and we have our new color, and we're just single crocheting across, like I said, for rows 9 through 16. Don't forget to work in the back loops only. You can see the nice ribbing effect this is given, and I really like the stripes color. If you want to make this completely just one color and you didn't want to change colors, just make sure you do 16 rows in total of this single crochet in the back loop only design. So once I finish row 16, we're going to fasten off with a really long tail for sewing, and then but I'll meet you up at that point and then we'll go on to the next step. Alright, when you finish row 16, we're going to chain 1. We're going to cut our yarn quite long as our first strand, if you want to just measure them up to each other. And then cut that. Be careful with your scissors. Okay, and then continue to pull that through that chain 1 that you just made. Okay, and that fastens that off. Pull it tight. Okay, and this is what your piece should then look like. Okay, so we have 8 rows, 2, 4, 6, 8 rows of our stripes color, the purple rain stripes, and then 2, 4, 6, 8 rows of the plain sugar plum. Okay, so you want half and half. Okay, now what I need you to do is rewind this, make one just like this except swap colors. So do your first 8 rows of plain sugar plum, and then your next 8 rows of the stripes, the purple rain stripes color. So it's just opposite, but you want it to go the same direction. So I did, and then I realized that I cut my yarn in the beginning short. So I don't have a beginning strand like this one here, but that's okay. We'll compromise later and work it out. So you can see here, this one starts row 1 through row 8 with the plain sugar plum color, and then rows 9 through 16 are with the purple rain stripes color, okay? Because you want them opposite. See, it's going to be on the opposite side. If you don't want it this way, you know, if you don't want it to be stripes opposite, if you want it to be like stripes and stripes and then solid and solid, you can do it that way too. But this is, like I said, creator's choice, so this is how I want mine to look. So I made 2 of these exactly the same. In the beginning we chained 39 or however many chains you needed to make 12 inches or 12.5 inches across here. So now once you have both of those done, we're going to actually make 2 more, but they're going to be longer. So I am going to show you just a starting of 1, and then you can go on to making those other ones yourself. So again, we're going to start with the stripes color. Okay, the purple rain stripes. We're making a slip knot. I showed you how to do that a few times. Oh, and remember, long strand. I did this again. So make sure that you have a long strand for sewing. Start that out and then make your slip knot, because I did that before and did not have a long strand, so I'll have to figure something out later for sewing, but that's okay. We're going to, for the longer pieces, so you're going to have these, sorry, I have all kinds of pieces everywhere. So we have this giant piece here, and then this piece here next to it, just like this. We are going to make the piece that goes in between here, because these short pieces are going on the sides like this. If you can kind of visualize it so far, this is what we have. So we have to make this piece right here, right now. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's throw all this away here. All right, let's get to crocheting. So we have the long strand for sewing, and then we are going to now chain 45. Okay, so I won't make you watch me chain, but we're just going to yarn over and pull through until we have 45 chains. Okay, and then what I just want you to do is rewind this to see that other piece that I made. Okay, this piece right here. I want you just to rewind this to see how to make this piece, and that's what we're going to do exactly for this piece. We're going to do 8 rows of the stripes and 8 rows of the solid, changing color after row 8, and we're just single crocheting in each stitch in the back loops only, but this one is longer. Okay, so if you need to chain more or less than 45, go ahead and measure it up to your pieces, and I showed you in the beginning of this segment where exactly this piece is going to go. So I'm just gonna crochet this piece. I'm just gonna do it on my own, and then it's exactly the same as that other piece we made that was 39 chains in the beginning, 38 stitches across. So just do that, and then I'll meet you up when I probably chained too much now, I'm talking too much. So I'm just gonna make this piece, and then I'll meet you up when I have it completed. Alright, just finishing up this piece now. So I just made this whole piece off camera. When you're ready to fasten this off, just chain 1. We're going to cut our yarn long, just like how we started with a long strand. So just going to do the same thing I did earlier. Measure this out as long as this, and then cut this. Be careful with the scissors. And then continue to pull that all the way through. Awesome. Alright, so I have this longer piece, and then I've made another one opposite though, okay? So you can see here, we have so many pieces to this blanket, but it will turn out fabulous in the end. So I made 2 of these longer pieces. These are exactly the same, okay? In the beginning, we chained 45, okay? But I started one with stripes and then ended I did 8 rows with stripes and then 8 rows with the solid sugar plum color. And then I started one with the sugar plum, did 8 rows of that, and then the last 8 rows are with the stripes. Okay, so these 2 pieces we have, and we have those shorter ones as well. I showed you how to make that one earlier, and so I have those 2 as well. So you can see they are just a tad bit shorter. Okay, so that we have 4 strips now. So now, if you want to, you can lay your piece out, kind of match each piece up, make sure these are the length that you need them to be. And then all we have to do is make the center. We're going to make 4 mini squares in the center. So I'm going to lay this all out for you when I have all my squares done in the center, and then you'll see how to sew all this together. So grab your sugar plum color, your plain color, put all those pieces aside, and we're going to make 2 squares with plain sugar plum, and then 2 squares you have to make with the stripes color as well. Okay, so that purple rain stripe. So I'm going to show you 1 square, and then you can make the 3 other ones on your own. They're exactly the same. So make a slip knot. Okay, and then insert your hook. Okay, and now we are going to chain 4. So yarn over and pull through 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in the 4th chain from the hook, we are going to put 2 double crochets. So yarn over, go into that 4th chain, which is the very first chain way over here. So go into that, then yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. That's a double crochet. So again, yarn over, go in to that same chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Now we're going to chain 2, so yarn over and pull through 1 and 2. And in that same chain that we were working in way over here, we're going to put 3 more double crochets in there. So yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So there's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. And now we're going to repeat. So chain 2, 1 and 2. The chain 2 is our corner. And then we're going to put 3 more double crochets into that same chain. 1, 2, and 3. Awesome. So you can kind of see that it's starting to form a square. So now we're going to chain 2 again. 1 and 2, and put 3 more double crochets into that. Now it looks like a center circle, actually. That center. 1, 2, and 3. All right, now we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2. And now to close this round, you can see here, it looks like there's a chain up 3. 1, here's 2, and then 3 is right here. We're going to go under this loop here, and under that loop there. Okay, so there's 1 loop underneath. I don't know if you can see that. There's 1 loop right underneath there, and then these 2 loops on top. And then we're going to slip stitch, so yarn over, pull through, and pull through. And there you've closed round 1. So there's our mini square. We have to do 1 more round of a simple single crochet, so chain up 1. And single crochet exactly where you slip stitched. So go back underneath those 2 loops there. Okay, right there. Yarn over and pull through. And then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. That's a single crochet. Now we're going to single crochet in the next 2 stitches. So go into this stitch here, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Next stitch, single crochet. Now in this chain 2 space right here of the corner, we are going to put a single crochet, then we're going to chain 2, and then put another single crochet into that same corner. Just like that. Now in each one of these next 3 stitches, we are going to put a single crochet. So 1, 2, and 3. And then just repeat what we did. So in this next corner here, put a single crochet, then chain 2, and then put another single crochet in that corner. And now just single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And then in the next corner, just single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. Okay, we're almost done here. Single crochet in each of these 3 stitches. And then in this last corner, we're going to single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. Then to fasten this round off, we are going to go into this first single crochet right here. Okay, so you can see this chain up 1 right here. Don't do anything with that. Just go into the first single crochet stitch, yarn over and pull through, slip stitch. Then chain 1 to fasten this off. We're going to cut with a long strand to use that for sewing, and then just continue to pull that all the way through, and then pull that tight. Okay, so this is what it should look like. Now this middle here, if you didn't start with a magic ring, you can see there's like a hole right there. I don't want that, so I'm going to grab my yarn needle. We're going to turn this over to see this long strand in the center here. I'm grabbing my yarn needle and I'm going to sew this underneath. Now, if you did use the magic ring to make this square, That is optional, and you probably won't need to then sew this, but I personally just like to chain, and that's fine. But if you are concerned or want to learn how to do the magic ring or make granny squares with a magic ring, there are video tutorials out there. And if you've seen my 365 days of granny squares, you'll know that there are many different ways to start a granny square. But this is just a little mini granny square, little pixel almost. Okay, so I'm just sewing that around underneath, as you can see, and once you're satisfied with how it is sewn in, then we can trim that extra yarn. So just grab your scissors and cut. And there you have a little tiny square. How cute. So now I need you just to make 3 more of these. Let me grab my other ones here. We have 2 in just the plain sugar plum color. Okay, exactly the same. And then I have 2 in the stripes, and actually I got lucky on the stripes because they both look like 2 dark squares, just no striping at all. So your striping might turn out a little different if you're using the Soft Essentials stripes in the purple rain stripes. This is just naturally how mine turned out. So I have 2 dark purple squares and 2 light purple squares. So we're going to lay them out, okay, opposite each other, like that. And that is how they will be, okay, in the center of our blanket. Okay, so now I have all my pieces all made. So I'm going to show you now. I'm going to lay this all out, and we're going to try to make room here so I can lay this all out, and we're going to start sewing our pieces all together. So let me get all my pieces here. We have our big pieces. Let's start with those. And there's a special way to make these. So I'm going to just show you here. We want row 1. Okay, this is row 1 of this piece. Okay, we're going to have that closest to us in the left bottom corner. Okay, then the other piece, this popcorny looking cluster piece, we want row 1 right here to be closest to us and on this side over here. Okay. Then we want one of those short panels. Okay. Oops, that's a long panel. We want the short panel here, and we want the stripes to be next to the solid, and the solid side next to the stripes piece. Okay, now you can decide, I have 8 ridges on the top here. You can flip this over if you want to have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ridges on the top, which is what I'm going to do. Okay, so there's that piece. Then we are going to then grab this piece right here, and you want row 1 now to be away from you on this left side. Okay, right there. Then between these 2 pieces here, we want one of these long pieces. And again, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ridges. I'm going to flip this over to have 7 on the top there. Okay, and we're kind of just playing around here. So obviously the striping design here, you may not, the natural striping of it, you may not be, super excited about that. So you may want to flip this one over to that side when we get all of this together. So we're just playing around with pieces right now. So then this piece right here, we want row 1 to be facing the opposite way. So I'm going to go way over here. Okay, so row 1 is over here. Okay, then we have all kinds of pieces here today. Okay, then we want this short piece. Let me see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ridges. We're going to put this piece over here. There we go. and it's off center. Okay, and then this, oopsie, this is the short piece. What am I talking about? This is the short piece. So 7, this one goes right here. So this one will go right here. Okay, remember, striping part goes next to the solid. Solid part goes next to the stripes. So solid part on this goes next to the stripes, and stripe part on this goes next to the solid. So solid, stripes, solid, stripes. Okay, so those are all our pieces. And now we have the center squares. So for the center squares, when I use the stripes color, I got dark purple squares. I am going to put those next to the solid and solid. So right in this corner here. Okay. And then this one is just going to be opposite. And then we have this one here and this one here. They're solids. So you can see that these solid little squares are next to a stripe and a stripe. And they're kitty corner to a solid, which is right here. Okay, so it's all the mathematics of it. And there's all kinds of strands everywhere, but we're going to use this for sewing. So this is what your piece should look like. So just keep in mind 7 ridges on the top for each of these side strips. Okay, and then row 1 on these 2 bigger pieces are facing you, closest to you, and the row 1 on those 2 pieces are furthest away from you. Okay, so they're all facing each other. Okay, and then these are opposite. Okay, so you can look at this, and then this is how it's going to be sewn together. So now we have to get our yarn needle. Okay, and we're gonna start sewing. So what we have to do is, let's start wherever. Let's just start in the middle here and then work our way out. Okay, so we're going to take our long strand of any square. Okay, we're just whip stitching. But since this strand of yarn is not in a corner, I'm going to just go and get into my corner. Just like that. Okay, and then now I'm in the corner here. We're going to take both of these. You can see we're on the right side here. We're going to fold this down. Okay, and I'm going to have this strand of yarn on this side because I'm going to sew this to the square that's next to it over here. So I'm going to fold this down on top of it. So we're looking at the outside, or the back side of our blanket. And we're just going to whip stitch this. So go in this stitch here and this stitch here. Okay, and whip stitching is always going through the same side. Okay, so we're going through this side, so we're going to go back through this side. And just line up the stitches. There's the same amount of stitches on these squares, so you'll have nothing to worry about. Now with the bigger side panels, the strips and everything, those have a different amount of stitches on the sides, so I'll show you how to attach pieces that have different amounts of stitches. But this one here, I'm just whip stitching across, just like that. Awesome. So if you flip it back through, you'll see that they're attached. Pretty awesome. So now, to fasten this off, we're going to go underneath those stitches again. Okay, I'm going to keep my finger in this loop here. I'm going to come back around through that loop and then pull tight. And that ties it off. Now, that's going to be secure. If you want to do it twice, you can, but it's secure, and I'm going to sew this underneath those stitches now to hide this end. And then I'm going to come back through just like that. Okay, and then I have to find my scissors here. We're going to trim that short. Okay, so now those two are secure. Then we are going to take this strand here and do the same thing. We're going to go out to the corner. So the closest corner, see, right here. Okay, then we're going to maybe have, so we're going to look at this square here. The square has to be attached to this square, so we're going to have this long strand at the bottom here. Okay, so we're going to attach it to this side right here. Okay, and then we're just going to whip stitch this just like I showed you. So just make sure your strand of yarn, your long strand for your next square, is in the right position so that you can use that one for sewing the next square. But then just whip stitch this just like that, and then do the same thing for the last square. So once I have all 4 of my squares all sewn together, it's exactly the same concept, so it won't make you watch me do the last square. Just sew all your squares together, and then once they're all sewn up, we'll go on to the next step of attaching the other pieces. Alright, I just sewed my last one on here, so I have all 4 little mini squares attached. And I'm just sewing in this last end and trim that. Okay, so this is what it should sort of look like. Awesome. So now we're just going to take this piece and just set it aside because the majority of the sewing is with the other pieces. So I'm just going to set this aside, and now we're going to sew together these 3 pieces. Okay, and then we're just going to attach one by one going around kind of in a clockwise form. So I'm going to start with these 2 here. So what we're going to do is first take one strand of this strip. So we're going to use this strip since we cut the yarn on this piece short. Okay, we're going to use the strands on our strips to sew everything. So take the long strand on this side, and remember, 7 ridges up, stripes next to solid, and yarn your needle. So line them up. If you need to pin this, you can. Totally, that's fine. But what I'm going to do is just flip this over so that the 7 ridges are facing the right side, the top of this piece. So you can see the bumpy cluster stitches are raised on this side. So that's the top of our blanket. So we're going to face those 2 together, and we're going to sew the wrong sides together, or I guess the right sides together, looking at our wrong sides. Okay, and I'm just going to go from this corner, and we're just whip stitching. Okay, so going from one side into the next piece, this next stitch, and I'm lining up the stitches with the side. Now obviously there's no stitches up this piece, but if you kind of just line it up, if, like I said, you can pin these together to line up the edges if you want to, but just basically wherever your needle fits and where it lines up with the next stitch should be good to sew together. Okay, and we're just whip stitching. As you can see, I'm always going through this piece first and then this piece. Okay, and then coming back around. Now there are different ways to stitch your pieces together. You can do a mattress stitch, you can single crochet these together or slip stitch these together, but I'm just going to do the whip stitch because I cut my strands long when I was crocheting these pieces for that reason, so I can just sew these together just like that. So I'm just going to whip stitch this all the way up this piece, and then when I'm about to fasten this part off, I will meet you up for the next piece. Alright, I just sewed up this side, so now I'm going to fasten this off. So I'm going underneath both of those same stitches of the last stitch there, putting my finger into this loop and then coming back around this loop, and then removing my finger and pulling that tight. Okay, and you can do that once or twice, and then we're just going to weave in this end right away so we don't have to weave it in later. So just go down through those stitches and then come back up to secure it. And then stretch it all out. Okay, grab those scissors and cut that extra. Okay, and then flatten this out, open this up, and you can see that it really made a nice seam there. Lovely! So now we're going to attach this piece to this piece, and you can see I ended up actually not cutting my yarn long on that piece. I remember that from the beginning. So if you didn't cut your yarn long on this piece, let me show you. We have a ball of yarn here. I'm just going to take one end and just yarn my needle with that. If you did not cut long strands, or if you forgot to, we are going to put this over this here. Let me make sure these are going the right way. And yes. So we're going to put this on top of this like that. Okay, we're going to whip stitch this. So grab that yarn. Okay. You can even sew up this strand so that it gets sewn in if you want. We're going to go in this stitch and then into this piece. Okay, and then we're just going to pull our yarn strand kind of long. And then we're going to leave that until the end. I'm going to tie a knot in the end. But we're just going to whip stitch up this piece, up these two pieces, exactly how I just whip stitched up the other pieces. Okay, so just going up this side. And you can see here I'm just holding this little strand inside to sew it in as well, so I don't have to sew it in later. Just hides it underneath these stitches. And we're just whip stitching wherever the needle fits, you know, on the side is where it should be. And you can take your time with this, you know, where your needle should go and how it looks, and if you need to open this back up to see the front of your piece to make sure your stitches, you know, are looking good on the side. Yep, they look good so far. Okay, so just fold that back over and just continue working whip stitching up this piece. Then once I'm ready to fasten this off, I'll show you, you know, I have to fasten off then the end and the beginning because I have my yarn attached to the ball of yarn. So I'll show you that and then we'll go on to attaching the next piece. Alright, so I finished sewing up this piece, so I'm just going to fasten this off just like I did the other piece. So I'm going to go through the same last two stitches. Okay, keep my finger in that loop and then put this needle through that loop again. And then just pull that tight, just like that. And then just sew in this end, but we still have that other end to deal with because I didn't cut my strand long. So let me just sew this end in, and we're going to do the same exact thing though to the other end. Okay, always sew in your ends when you're finished sewing this piece together, or these pieces together. Just make sure you sew in your ends then when you fasten off. Just so that you don't have to in the end of this big project, because there are so many ends in this project. Okay, so just stretch it out, cut any extra. And then we have the bottom here. I'm going to cut this yarn because that was attached to the ball. And then I'm going to yarn my needle with this strand. Okay, and then I'm actually going to go through this piece here first, and then through this bottom piece just like that. Keeping my finger through that loop, coming back around through that loop, and then pulling tight. And then we're just going to sew this up inside some stitches. And we're going to come back down to secure it. There. Okay, and then we can cut that. Awesome. So now we can open this up And you can see that it looks fabulous. How lovely. And this weight of this piece and this piece kind of stretch this piece out to make it bigger, which is really cool. So now we're going to attach this piece between these two pieces. Okay, so if you want to turn your work just a little bit. Okay, so we have this solid side next to the stripes piece. Okay, I have my long strand, and now this is nice because these stitches will line up with these stitches along this edge, but this piece has 44 stitches, and this piece has how many? 47 stitches. So this piece has a few more, 3 more stitches than this piece. So when we're sewing these together, you're going to double up on 3 stitches. So you can do that evenly, or if you want to right next to each other, 3 stitches isn't going to make a big difference. So what we're going to do is just whip stitch through the first stitch here and this first stitch here. Okay, I'm going to also sew this piece in because it is a short strand and I can then avoid sewing that in later. Okay, so to double up, we are going to go through doing 1 whip stitch through these 2 stitches. Okay, and now the one that has more stitches on it, okay, which would be this stripes piece, has more stitches on it. It has 47, and this piece has 44. We are going to go into the next stitch on this bigger piece, this longer piece. So we're going to go into the next stitch, but we're going to go back into that stitch that we were already worked through on this piece. Okay, so you can see we already worked through it right there. We're going to work through it again. So there's basically 2 stitches in 1 stitch on this. That way, that's one of them. Okay, now I might go to the middle here, get to the middle, just doing 1 whip stitch in each stitch, and when I get to the middle, I'll probably do a double up again, and then in the end, another double up. So then my stitches will all line up, and they will all look fabulous. And no like bunching or any extra stitches or anything in the end. Okay, so I'm just going to whip stitch across this piece exactly like that, and then once these are attached, we'll go on to attaching the next piece. Alright, so a couple things. I'm back here. I just sewed this up. I ended up, what I was showing you in the beginning here, as I was sewing it up like this, but I ended up folding this over and then just sewing this up, and then like I said, I did a double up in the middle here, as you can see right there. There's a little double up. And then there's a double up in the end here as well. So I did a little double up somewhere over here. I think it was right here. Anyway, I doubled up 3 stitches in total so that they all lined up, and then I got to the middle here and we're at this strip now, and I was like, oh, these little squares have to go over here like this, so why don't I just sew to the middle, the center line, and then when I come back through the other side I can sew on this side. So I have a little bit of yarn left over, so I'm going to put this over this piece, the center strip here, okay? And then we're just going to whip stitch to the center, so just this one square. So I'm just going to do that as well. That way all these pieces will start to get sewn together very easily, and then I can fasten off just because I have a little bit of extra yarn anyway. So I'm just going to sew this. And there's only like 7, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. And there's 8 rows, so I'm going to skip a row. And then we'll just go through each row. Okay, and you can line yours up however you need to get to each stitch. And make sure this piece is sewn on nicely. And you have to line this up then so that the stripes part lines up and the solids parts lines up, just like that. Awesome. And then when you get to the center here, we're just going to go underneath a few center stitches and underneath here. And I'm going to fasten this off because I don't have much yarn left anyway. So I'm going to come back around and through. Okay, and that's sewn on. And now I'm going to sew this underneath the stitches I just made. Just to fasten this off. There we go. And then just cut any extra. Awesome. So now we can lay this out and see what we just did. Okay, so now we'll still have to sew up this end here, which is totally fine. We can do that later. So now when I sew on this piece over here, okay, when I come back through here, I'm gonna sew this on, okay? And then, let's see here. So we have some pieces we have to still work with. But now I have this strand right here. I'm gonna attach this piece next. So let's get all this out of the way. Okay, and we're just gonna sew these on then. That's, I mean, basically all I have to show you. We're just gonna sew this piece on, then this piece, and this piece. Then this strip goes here. Okay, sewing this on exactly how we sewed on these pieces, okay? And then sewing this piece on, this piece to this piece, this piece to this piece, and then sewing any extra that we need to sew around this middle square. So I'm not going to show you how to sew all these on. I showed you how to sew on all 4 of these pieces and part of this piece here. So if you want to, just rewind this to see how to sew on sides, but it is essentially the same for all of these pieces. So I'm going to sew on all the rest of these pieces. Once this piece is one large piece and all my ends are sewn in, I will meet you up and we will make the border. So good luck! Alright, so I just sewed everything together, so this is what it should look like right now. The edges are kind of a little messed up right now, but everything else looks fabulous. So you can see the design here, and we'll zoom out so you can see where everything is, where everything goes, okay? And so now I'm going to make a border around the whole thing, just very simple because I only have this much yarn left, so out of all the skeins that I have. So I am going to do a simple double crochet border. We can start anywhere, in any corner, and in the corner here, okay, right there, I'm going to attach the yarn, so just hooking it on here and pulling it through. Okay, and then we're going to chain up 3. 1, 2, and 3, and that's going to count as our first stitch. Now in the corners we're going to put a total of 3 stitches. So I'm going to yarn over, go back into the same area here, the same corner, yarn over and pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. That's a double crochet, so another one in there as well. So it looks like there are 3 double crochets in the corner because that chain up 3 counts as a stitch. And now we're going to work up this side, and basically wherever your hook fits is where a stitch should go. Now don't bunch anything up or anything, just you know, space them out nicely. But we're just double crocheting, very simple. Double crochet all the way across the side, and then when you get to the next corner, put 3 double crochets in the corner. You can see I'm also crocheting over the stragglers, over these loose ends, so I don't have to sew them in later. But like I said, wherever your hook fits is where you should put a stitch. and we're just doing a simple double crochet around. Now there are other borders out there if you have more yarn that you can make a special border, a shell border or a frilly border. You can see other video tutorials online to see a different type of border. Make a special border around this piece. I'm just going to do this simple border because the piece itself is very busy. So I'm just going to double crochet around. Once I come back around, I'm going to show you how to fasten off and we'll be done with this whole piece. So just double crochet around the whole piece and I'll meet you back up when I'm finished. Alright, just finished double crocheting all the way around this piece, so I'm just going to go into my chain up 3 here, 1, 2, 3, the beginning chain up 3, and we're going to slip stitch in there. So go in, and then yarn over, pull through, and pull through. Now if you have enough yarn and you want to do another round, just chain up 3, work a double crochet in each stitch around. You can even put 3 double crochets in the middle double crochet of your 3 double crochet grouping for the corners. But I'm just going to fasten off right here. I want to be finished with this blanket, so I'm going to chain 1, cut that, pull it through, pull tight, grab my yarn needle right away, and then I'm just going to sew in any loose ends that I have throughout this whole blanket. I think this is just the last one. I think I tried sewing in as many as I could, you know, throughout this whole pattern. So I'm just going to sew this underneath these stitches that I just made in the back here, and then just come back through just like that. But that's it. This project is finished. So we can lay it out. Now if you want to, you can block this piece, but you do not have to if you don't want to. It is beautiful and a nice rectangular piece, but the edges, some edges have some character to them. I guess I crocheted a little bit on this edge, so it kind of got a little, but I'll block this and then that'll be straight. And if you want to, you can pin this down on a towel or a mat and then like pin it down and then spray it with a lot of water and then let it dry, and it should dry straight and in the shape that you want it to. So you don't really have to do any mixture, just spray it with water. Or you can submerge it in water, wring it out, and then lay it nice and flat and pin it in on the sides to keep its shape. But there it is. How beautiful! Thank you so much for watching and learning how to make this blanket with me today. Make sure to share your photos on Facebook and on Instagram and hashtag YARNutopia. I'd love to see your patchwork medley. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Happy hooking!